Okay. I believe we're live.
Hello.
Hi.
Welcome to the live stream.
Yeah. Can someone confirm in the chat that you can see and hear us? I'd like to make sure that it is in fact working.
We're actually live.
Yes.
I'm not convinced that we are, but that's okay. Oh, no, we're good. We're going.
We're
Awesome.
good? Okay.
Well, I think so. Yep, we're here. We're live.
Excellent. Audio check, visual check.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
guys.
Awesome. Well, we decided that we just finished publishing all 3 of our Moab Rocks videos. There will be spoilers in this live stream, so if you haven't watched them yet, circle back and watch this later. But we figured we'd do a little live stream, answer questions. We've got a pretty big list of questions from Patreon, but also feel free to drop them in the chat.
Yep. Yeah, we've got like 30 questions or 20 questions or something, which is awesome. And also, as you can see from the pinned comment, Be More Awesome Kit orders close on Monday. That is like 3 days from now. And this is the last time we will be doing this design. And it's really cool. So please.
Yeah, don't message
forget.
us on Tuesday and tell us. So we thought we'd grab we have trail kit as well as the spandex.
Yeah.
I think someone asked that on YouTube. We're like, no, we have all the things. This is the trail jersey. This is one of mine. It is a 3/4 length. We have a full length short sleeve. I'm personally on team 3/4 length. Don't know what I do, but just, it's not all the way down, but anyway.
Yeah, it's like you're getting some
TMI.
coverage, but it's not as warm as a full length one.
Yeah.
Audio is really low. Okay, let's see if we can.
You can probably just talk louder.
Yeah, or move in
So
just a little
meant
bit.
to put my phone on Do Not Disturb. Someone says, yay, it's horizontal. Yes.
Yes.
Okay, is that better on the audio? We'll also just try to talk louder.
Yeah.
So basically, we mostly want to answer questions about Moab Rocks or training or therein. So we are going to kind of keep things focused a little bit. I feel like sometimes live streams can go way on tangents, but I would say the someone says Sid's audio is low. I just am not as loud as Mackie, like it's the same microphone. But I can try to talk louder.
No, it sounds good. Audio is better.
Okay. We had a lot of questions on the video about Mackie's crash, and we had a few questions on Patreon. For example, where is it? Yeah, I think this is a great question. How much time did your crash on day 2 cost you? Would the final results have been different? I have an opinion on this, but I'm going to let Mackie answer first.
Would the results have been different? Probably not. And I say that because Jeff is a very strong, very experienced racer, and he basically did what he needed to do to win, which was the first day he had a small gap on me. And then every other day, he was just like, as long as I'm with Mackie, I will win. And so, yeah, the crash lost me some time, probably 10, 15 seconds, maybe more. And so if it had been like an enduro where you're racing stages by yourself and I like crashed and lost 15 seconds, that would have made a difference. In this situation, mass start cross country race, Jeff would have just gone a little bit harder at one point to make sure that he didn't, like, that I wasn't able to pull away, and I don't think it would have made a difference.
I agree. That was going to be my answer, because you caught right back up to Carter again. Jeff caught both of you.
Yeah.
I don't think you were super rattled from it or anything. I think this race, especially for Mackie, but just in general, was pretty tactical and pretty strategic. And especially in cross-country racing, over 3 days, like 13 seconds is not a difference in fitness or strength, or it's really just like luck and having the right oomph at the right time, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's very tactical. It's very much about like doing what you need to do. And day 1 in a lot of ways was like the easiest only day to make up time, because basically if you could get a slight gap on that descent, it was hard to close the gap. And I think probably where I went wrong was when Jeff caught back up on day 1 on the whole enchilada, Porcupine Rim. At one point, I was like, I can stay with Jeff, and there was a slight climb, and I was like, that's fine. I'll let him get a little bit ahead, and then I'll just catch up afterwards. Not remembering or not taking seriously enough the fact that any gap on that trail is very hard to make up going down because there's just kind of a max speed you can go. And so I let him get a little bit of a gap. I was never able to close that gap. And then on the other days, there weren't really long technical descents or places to like make time on people, especially. It was up, down, up, down, up, down.
So we definitely had a couple comments on YouTube of why we didn't film the crash. And then we also just recently had a question in the chat saying, I've always been interested in how you manage GoPros and batteries when time matters in races. Are you swapping batteries or entire devices?
We do not record continuously.
Yeah.
Like as it is, we have probably 100 gigabytes per day of racing, which is a ton of footage to wade through. We don't need any more footage.
Yeah, if we recorded continuously, we would just have, I mean, as it is, we have like a server with 30 terabytes of footage on it. Like it would be unmanageable.
Yeah.
Which unfortunately that does mean that sometimes you miss things.
Yeah, sometimes you miss a pass or you miss a crash or whatever. And I didn't have my camera recording, crashed, broke it, and somebody had asked.
Happened?
Yeah, somebody asked what happened with the crash. Basically, it was a nothing crash. Like I was riding, my front wheel either caught an edge or slid out or something like that on a piece of slick rock, and I just went wham onto my chest. Fortunately, I was fine. The camera lens was not fine. My GPS was not fine, and the camera mount was very destroyed. Because like I turned the camera on to show that one little clip saying like I crashed, and then after that clip I went to adjust the camera angle because I could tell it was down from getting smashed, and the second I touched the camera to adjust it, it snapped off the mount, and I looked at the mount, and the mount was in like 2 pieces. So there was nothing I could do at that point. I stuck it in my mouth because I was on the
like
descent as that happened, and I was like, oh no, ride the next descent, and then at the bottom of the descent just shoved it in my back pocket, and that was the end of that. So
follow-up question, which I like this question from Ian. How about some stories of spare parts in stage racing? Mackie pointed out that you had a spare camera and a spare computer. What's the most oddball spare item you've brought and actually used? And how much of a spare bike do we bring in parts?
Let's answer the last one first. When we are going to a race with our vehicle, so we're driving to a race, we do not have an extra frame or an extra fork.
Sometimes we have wheels.
But we pretty much have everything else.
Yeah.
Like, because all of those things, like if there's a good shop in the area, you might be able to find it. If there's not, you're screwed. And it's much better to just have the parts and be able to swap them when you need to. So we bring most of our parts. An example of a time that we used a part that we brought was when we went to Madeira, where we flew, and we did bring an extra shock, and I ended up needing that extra shock. So I was very glad that I did that. Times that we've needed a part and not brought it.
Well, we haven't always had spare wheels, but it's not because we've broken wheels. It's just like there were, like we did a local race last year, Mackie flatted, like you could have put on another wheel.
That's true.
If we had brought like a fully ready set of wheels,
yeah,
but we didn't.
It would have been slightly faster. Instead, I just changed a tire midway through the race, which was kind of fun also. Also, to go back to the question about how we deal with the cameras, we set our cameras so that they only record for 3 minutes at a time. And it's like a little custom program that I wrote for GoPro Labs. So when we hit the record button, usually we hit it again to stop recording within a minute or two. If we forget, it will only record for 3 minutes and then it will stop, which helps a lot with the battery not running out. Obviously, day one, it still ran out, but that's because of the whole fiasco of the not starting properly, and we had to go back and get the others, and they weren't fully charged.
Yeah, for some reason, both of the GoPros just bricked themselves on the same day. So
which is really a bummer.
Go figure that one out.
Yeah.
I'm just looking through questions. So someone asked if we're doing BC bike race. Not this year. I'm sure we will do BC bike race again.
It's
but
amazing.
it's obviously a pretty big time commitment.
Yeah.
And we are doing another big trip here in a couple weeks, which we aren't sharing quite yet.
Yeah.
I think we've had a couple just training questions, generally speaking. Let's see.
Here's one about how we train together.
Okay, how do you handle training together with different power outputs and different paces? You can see it on interval threshold days, but what about the endurance training days? We don't ride together as much as you might think from our videos.
Yeah.
Obviously, like, it's more interesting to film a video on a day that we are riding together because something is going on.
Yes. You have somebody to have it in your footage.
Yeah, and I think like the reality, like, good training is kind of boring a lot of the time, so
And
you
lonely
don't
a lot of the
always
time.
see all of that. So we ride separately a lot of times. I mean, we also, like, a lot of the endurance rides, like, there isn't really a set pace, like you don't have to go a certain speed. So
yeah, we'll kind of shoot for like our endurance range power wise on climbs or flats where you can pedal, and then just accept that when you're descending, and that's fine. When we do endurance rides, what we'll often do to be able to like see each other is be like, okay, we're going to do this loop and I'm going to do like this extra part that goes out, and then we'll like meet back together for a second and then like go out and do a different one. The e-bikes are also awesome for riding together because we can just do different power settings and both be in our endurance zone but going the same speed. So that's always fun.
Yeah, so a question from Jim. I think it's amazing that a couple can both be achieving great results at the same time and in the same sport. Does both of you competing in the same race add to the pressure when one of you is in the support role? Does that make it easier? After all, not many people have practical experience of competing like that. And that is a great question.
That is a great question.
We are, I would say, warm up and start line divorced. You know, some people are sleeping divorced. I just like pretend that I don't know Mackie for like the 20 minutes before the race because he likes to show up to the start like 45 seconds before, and that stresses me out. But honestly, like, other than that, I don't think necessarily adds to the pressure. I don't know, maybe you just don't know any different.
I would say when one person is support crew, there is a benefit to that.
Yeah,
because like, yeah, that person can, like, as a racer, you know what the other person needs, and so you can do those things. You can do all their water bottles for them, you can check their tire pressure in the morning, and you can do all of those things for them, which does help. But the thing is, we like racing similar races, and neither of us wants to give that up in general. Like, occasionally one of us will be like, okay, I'm not as excited. Like Sid supporting me at Downeyville last year. She was like, I'll support you at Downeyville because you really want to do it.
And that's
Great,
a particularly logistically complicated race too. It's hard to do it by yourself.
Yeah.
Someone asked, what is your plan to beat Kabush? Well, we can't tell you that. You might be watching. There was another good question in here. Someone says, will you be giving up YouTube now that Lo is going to take the whole thing over? We've helped Lo enough with her channel that if she has 1 million subscribers, she's going to retire us out, you know, so that we have a deal.
It's fine. We figured it out.
But since we're doing that, everyone go subscribe to Lo's new channel, Lo Send Quest. It's a play on her last name. I think it's going to be a lot of fun to see her figure out YouTube.
Yeah.
So, let's do some training questions. Don't run away, everyone.
How do you prioritize power versus endurance in your training? Which one is better than other? Is one better than the other in mountain bike disciplines?
Ooh. I mean, I think that's why mountain biking is such a fun, challenging sport, in that you do have to have good endurance and good aerobic threshold and high power.
The ability to like punch up steep little things. Yeah.
Yeah. Someone asked in the chat, I think I've kind of lost it, but like, what are our FTPs and how do we train to increase them? Basically, like, that is like, FTP is important, and I specifically have done a lot of work at threshold or like right below threshold over the past 2 years to increase that. To be honest, I don't think either of us knows a like pinpointed number at any point. We kind of let Mike take care of that. Like I'm definitely somewhere in the 240s and Mackie's in the
330,
Yeah.
maybe 340 range.
I think the thing to kind of remember for mountain biking though is it really isn't just a factor of FTP. Like that really does come into play maybe on a stage like day one of Moab Rocks where you
Mhm.
have that long climb, which for Mackie was exactly an hour.
Yep.
But a lot like day two of Moab Rocks, however, was more about like how many times can you go to like 115% of threshold and then recover and do it again.
Yeah.
So,
and like Sid was saying, we have a coach so that we don't have to figure this out ourselves. Like we don't have to understand the science, have a 4-year degree in training physiology and coaching to be able to do it. Like we tell Mike, here are the races we want to do. You know, we need our FTP to be higher because we want to go faster, you know, or what do you think we need to do to go faster? And then Mike is like, here's your training, go do it. And then we, you know, communicate if we're having like my last few interval workouts until today, I was not hitting my numbers and I was frustrated and it was really hard. And Mike was like, well, I made them hard. Like just keep going basically.
Right
and
now.
So, and then this today, I actually hit my numbers and I'm very proud of that.
Good job.
Thanks.
Everyone tell Mackie good job for crushing his intervals. Question from Jeff while we're on the topic.
Yeah.
Seems like you both have built a trust relationship with Coach Mike, which is important. A specific example of where you have chosen not to follow his advice for better or worse.
Ooh.
That's a great question.
It is a good question.
I think I'm gonna like weasel out of this a little bit.
Excellent.
But just like I would say we quote unquote don't listen to Mike somewhat frequently and like move our training around or don't do a workout because like Mike is a great coach, but he's not in our bodies, you know. So especially like when we're sick or something, sometimes we're just like, nope, not feeling it, need more recovery.
And that's the trust part. Like
exactly.
He trusts us enough that if we're like, it didn't happen today, we were too tired, things were too busy, it was just going to add stress. He's like, that's fine. Like I understand, you know, and that's not a big deal. If we did that all the time, then he might have some stern words. But you know, it is a both directions where like we have to honestly and objectively communicate with him and say, you know, we just weren't feeling it, it was too much, whatever. And he can say that's all right. Or Sid can just go crush her intervals and do them above the range because, yeah, that happens.
Well, but I think the other part though is like when something doesn't feel like it's working, like we can go to Mike and we kind of trust his assessment if he's like, oh, okay, looks like that isn't working, or like, nope, it's supposed to suck. Like,
just keep
going.
Doing it.
Yeah.
And that was like the example I was just talking about, these intervals. It was a combo of both. So I initially was like, hey, I did one of them and I was not able to do the rest of them. My numbers were way low. And he's like, okay, we're going to adjust the range some. We're going to shorten them and make you do more of them so that you have a little bit of break in between each one. And then when I still was not hitting my numbers, he was like, too bad. They're supposed to be hard. Keep going, essentially. And so that was really helpful, is like he adjusted the range to acknowledge that. But then he said, at this point, I want you to just go for it, even if you're not hitting the numbers. And it's just the way it is.
Yeah. So huge thank you to James for the super chat. It
Yes,
says,
thank you,
suggestion
James.
for 25, Tweed Love Enduro in Scotland. You can count on it raining.
So we've actually raced.
You have.
I've raced.
I have not. Yeah.
Tweed Love in Scotland back when it was an Enduro World Series,
which was 2015. So I guess it'd be 10 years. So maybe we should make it happen.
It was excellent. We ended up, Sid and I went back like 2 years later in January. I think 17, right? That we went back.
We went back in 17.
Yeah, and we just
you raced in 2015.
So I raced in 15. We went back in January of 17 and rode all of those same trails to practice riding in the mud, and it was very helpful. We learned a lot. It was really wet and cold.
Yeah, that's definitely why we can ride in the wet.
Mhm.
Like when we did BC bike race, not this past year because it was really dry, but like the first time it was wet and it was just like these wet routes and it was like XC trails, so it wasn't like, you know, super steep and harrowing. You could just haul on them and like we passed all these guys and because we were doing it as a duo and someone was like, "Where are you from? You're so good on wet routes." And we're like, New Mexico, baby.
That surprised
but we
them.
learned to ride routes in Scotland.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe we'll go back. Okay, while we're talking about Mike, we've had a couple questions about his reaction to the spicy meal in the video.
Well, we also got a text from one of
From
our
our
patrons,
friend Lenny,
Lenny,
yeah.
who we also know IRL in real life, and Lenny asked how Coach Mike was after the melt your clucking
You know, we
face-off
didn't
sandwich.
get a next morning update, Mike.
It's
so
true.
If you're out there,
If you're out there, you can
I
comment and
think
let
he's-
everybody know.
He's in Europe with Paralympics.
That's
so
true,
He
he's
won't be
probably
in
asleep.
the chat right
Yeah.
now. But he weathered it pretty well. But he
Well, it was
definitely
just funny
suffered a
because you
little
guys,
bit.
as you guys saw in the video, he like takes the first bite and he's like, "Yeah, whatever, it's a little spicy." No, and like 5 minutes later, he's like crying and bright red. It was funny. I was very glad I did not get it. Yeah.
Thank you, Darren, for the
Super chat.
We will put it towards a burrito. You know us.
Yep. Excellent.
What's sort of our next? I think we hit the training questions. Let me just scroll through here real quickly. We've had a couple questions for just like how you train. Someone says, "How do you train for a 4-hour mountain bike race?" I mean, kind of the same way you train for a 2-hour mountain bike race, except more volume if you can do it and have time to do it.
It's
and
also,
ability to recover from
I
it.
think, worth noting that we have many times raced events that were longer than our longest training rides. And this was something that Sid's dad, Jim, said. He and Ellen, Sid's mom, both worked with Coach Mike as well. And Jim did a 50-miler, the Puzzler, and he hadn't ridden 50 miles on the mountain bike before that, at least not for a long time. And he was like, I should have been, doing tons of long rides, Coach Mike, and then had like the best day ever. And I think that was really helpful for him to realize that you don't have to do training rides as long as the events you're doing. So he didn't do that, which is great. And it worked well. So the answer is more volume is beneficial if you can, but you don't have to do a 4-hour ride to be able to do a 4-hour race.
Yeah. How do you deal with cramps during a race? This is from Tim. He says, "I know proper training and hydration, electrolytes before helps prevent them, but what do you do when they actually happen?" Punch them.
Yeah, as weird as it sounds, sometimes punching your cramp can like sort of shock the muscle and make it release. Powerful flavored things, mustard packets, pickles. Our friend Joe likes, what's it called? Fireball. Anything with like a super strong flavor. There's some fascinating science that I believe it activates like the vagal nerve, which like surprises the body and makes it not cramp. That's my basic understanding of the science.
Yeah.
I would say
I
would say in general, when I cramp, I have learned to ride through it, which mostly just takes practice. But basically, it hurts and it sucks, and the goal is to not get there because it's not really a whole lot you could do if you're cramping.
Yeah.
I mean, eat a ton of food and drink a bunch of water because you could be cramping because you haven't fueled properly. So make that a priority if you are cramping. But once you get there, there's not a whole lot to do, but keep trying to move forward because as soon as you stop, it's not necessarily going to make it better when you stop.
Yeah.
So you might as well just
I think
keep
that's
going.
an important point.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, honestly, this goes for like a lot of adverse things that can happen in a race. Is the more kind of fear and energy that you have around them, the harder it is to deal with, both mentally. Like for me, I think with cramps, when I just kind of accepted like, okay, if I'm doing a really hard race that is outside the scope of what I have been training for, like we've done El Paso Puzzler past 2 years, amazing race in El Paso. If you want to go to El Paso and ride dry trails in January, highly recommend.
Yeah.
Super rocky, really fun.
It's really good.
I've cramped every year, and like
Yeah.
the reality is just like doing a 6-hour race with really hard effort and going really hard in January, like I'm just gonna cramp, and like you kind of accept it, you know it's coming, but you aren't really worried about it because you know you'll just keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically, just, you know, and same thing with like, if you're just exhausted, just keep moving forward. Or if there's a section that you can't ride and you have to walk, just keep moving forward. Like, instead of worrying about like, oh no, I'm going slow, but like, just keep moving forward no matter what. If you can do that, you'll be much more successful.
And thank you to Jonathan for the super chat. If I missed any super chats, the chat is popping off, so we are definitely missing things in here. So if you want to make sure we see it, probably going to need to be in a super chat. But thank you to Jonathan. Will we get more skiing content during the winter? I don't know. I'll be honest. You guys have to watch the skiing videos. The skiing video kind of tanked a little bit.
It did not do very well.
Unfortunately, like our audience isn't skiing, but I think also like we just kind of like to make videos about what we like to do. So like you probably will see more in the winter.
There'll probably be some more skiing content at some point.
Watch the videos.
How does new bike compare with our previous bikes?
So we had extra. Sorry, I get excited sometimes. I had a question earlier of like how the transition was to the new bike. I would say like so easy. Like the first ride, that ride we did a video about at Glorieta where it got snowed and got muddy.
Yeah.
But like I was just like, I love this bike. I feel so comfortable on it. I mean, part of the reason the transition was easy is that like geometry wise, not a huge difference between the Rocket and the Signal Peak. But there's something about the Signal Peak, it just charges on the descents. Like it's
and
so
uphill
fun.
too.
Yeah.
Like it just rides so well up and downhill.
Yeah. We've gotten them a little lighter this year than last year. Not the lightest. I think the lightest XC bike we had was like fall of 2022, but we had kind of made some compromises there that we then backtracked on. So now we went back to wider rims and longer dropper posts for me because that was not working. But we do now have the Transfer SLs because Fox Transfer SL is in a 150 now.
In the 31.6. So that's why we have it on the Signals and couldn't on the Niners. Do you want to show off your new bike?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so Macky's gonna grab the camera here. Well, this is not gonna be a real bike check. We're gonna shoot a bike check video, but this is actually, oh boy. This is not the bike that I raced at Moab, but it is the bike that I raced at Moab. The only thing that's different is the frame because we finally got the Ari branded frames and I think it looks amazing.
Yeah.
So I am super happy. It is like 24.5 pounds with 34 step cast, 35 mil rims, 150 mil dropper post, like quite a bit of bike for 24.5 pounds. So I am very happy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah. And like I said, we're going to do a full bike check video at some point. We definitely had some questions of like, you guys need to talk about your bikes more in the videos. And part of the reason we haven't really done that is we were both riding Fazari branded frames. And part of the sponsorship was just kind of waiting until we had the new branding and the Ari bikes to do that kind of bike check sort of video. So
yeah. I also want to real quick acknowledge Jonathan, who had asked the question about the skiing, commented that he does watch our videos, and we realize that and we appreciate it.
I wasn't speaking directly to you.
The problem is just like in terms of number of views, that video did significantly worse than other videos at that time frame because, you know, most people are here for bike content and not skiing content. So there'll probably be some.
Someone commented wedding bells up there with a question mark. We have been married since 2017.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people don't realize.
Because we don't wear rings.
But we're going on our honeymoon this year, so yay!
Yeah.
More on that soon.
Yeah.
With Lo and Joe, of course.
Yeah. It's a group honeymoon. Ian asks, any thoughts on the stages issues?
Yeah.
That's a great question. Thank you for the super chat, by the way. Basically, in years past, we did have a financial relationship with Stages. They were awesome to work with, very supportive. We really appreciated it. This year, from the get-go, things were tighter and they were having some problems. And so they basically said, like, this year we can't provide financial support. They were another one of our sponsors that we lost financial support from. Because of that, them going away, like, is really a bummer because we knew a lot of people who worked there. It's really hard. Like, we feel for everybody who lost their jobs. It has not affected us financially because we didn't have a financial relationship with them this year. We are still running their power meters and their bike computers, the Stages Dash, because we really like them.
And luckily we had some spares.
And we had some spares.
Smash them. So
yeah.
We're not quite sure what we'll do next. We've looked at other bike computers. There are a couple features on the Dash that we are very loath to give up.
Like the horizontal?
The landscape mode.
I love landscape mode.
And then just some of the functionality on the workout stuff that we really like. I also unpopular opinion, but Garmin has too many features. I just ride with people with Garmin's and all the time it's like bing, 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 bing. Like you crashed, you did a jump. Like, oh, it's high traffic. That's too much.
Yeah.
I'm sure you can turn those off. So, we may yet run a Garmin.
Yeah. Basically, at this point, we're happy with the Stages Dash. If we run out of them or support really goes away, then we'll look into other options.
Yeah.
But they're pretty nice.
We'll see what happens, basically.
Yeah.
We don't really know anything that you guys...
Yeah, no, I wish we knew more.
No inside information.
No. What does your day after the race look like? Oh, that's an interesting one.
Question. Well, so this race is a nice one because everything is in Moab. There's no transitioning around. We get a condo. We go back to the condo, hang out. We got the jet boot recovery leg things that we are very excited about.
Those are awesome. The princess
call
pants,
them
as
the
we call
princess
them.
pants, because if you're in the princess pants, everyone has to bring you your food and water.
Yeah, you're like, I'm stuck.
Yeah.
Could you please bring me a sandwich?
So basically, for something like Moab, it's like you get back, you eat, you deal with whatever's going on the bike, shower, nap, hang out. I mean, honestly, it's really the life. Like, this is why we do stage racing, because it's amazing. Yeah, I love it.
And then the day after, generally we're either off or we might have like an hour spin just to kind of flush the legs. If we drove somewhere and it's a significant drive, we'll usually start the drive just to get home and start processing footage and be able to recover and sleep in our own bed, that kind of stuff. But yeah, stage racing, we love stage racing because all you do is focus on riding your bike and eating and sleeping and recovering. And it's like grown up summer camp.
We've had a couple questions just specifically about Moab rocks. With one from Jonathan who says, as someone who races enduro is interested in expanding their racing horizons, would you recommend Moab rocks as a first stage race? 3-day format, as opposed to 5 to 6 and not ultra long distances is appealing. I think coming from enduro, especially if you are in the Mountain West and are kind of familiar with Moab-like terrain, I think it's a great one.
Yeah, and just in general, the race is well run. The people who put it on are awesome, very cool people, and the trails are really good. And I will say, it's worth noting that, like, while the distances are not ultra long, they do take a while. And, are, like, depending on how fast you're going, they take longer, whatever. But, like, don't look at 20 miles and be like, that's short.
Yeah.
Because it's not an easy 20 miles. It's a very hard 20
that
miles.
Day 2 is rough.
Yeah.
Just very relentless. Someone said, how would you characterize Moab Rocks as an event for less skilled folks? What should non-pro riders focus on to be able to have a good time there?
It's a great question.
I think definitely technical climbing, power, and upper body work, especially because it's early in the season. A lot of people get out there and they're just like their hands, arms, shoulders are wrecked after Porcupine, which is the first day. So I think if your main goal is to just have fun, like definitely you want to be working on your fitness because it's riding for 3 days, but I think not doing that at the expense of some strength training and gym work and if possible riding on rocky trails.
And then in terms of actually having fun during the race, eat.
Yes.
Which is hard at like the first day, fine, it's a long climb, but the second and third days, there's not really like extended open dirt roads where it's easy to eat. So practicing eating on trail, if you're actually eating physical food, or
There was a question about that in the chat actually, about
Yeah.
how to drink on technical trails.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Practice, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, go into a grassy field and practice like pulling your bottle out and taking a swig and putting it back in, and then do it with the other hand just in case. And then like, you know, practice putting it in your mouth and holding it there for a second without your hands, because what happens a lot of times is you'll be riding a trail and you'll pull your bottle out and you'll realize
like, oh shoot, we're
there's a technical thing and you don't have time to put it back in the cage. You clamp it in your mouth, you ride through the technical thing, and then you put it back in afterwards.
Mackey is an expert. GoPros in the mouth.
I'm telling you guys, you could have strong teeth.
Also, go for the eating. You just go for the chipmunk cheek method. Like when you have a spot, you just shove it.
Shove it all in your cheek, and then you can still breathe. And then when you have a chance, you bring it in the middle and then chew it up and swallow it. I'm also just gonna say real quick, guys, hit the like button or the heart button. We'll try to get we have a fairly good number of people in here, but let's get some more people in here. That's always good.
And I'm sorry about the beep. That's because Mackie didn't put his phone on Do Not Disturb.
Probably true. Sorry.
I had a thought, but I lost it there.
Can
Yeah, so as for like racing and drinking and consuming food, like that is definitely something where pre-riding helps. And like while you pre-ride, note those spots. And on day 2 of Moab, like that bike path section that was like 5 minutes long, like I crammed in probably half a bag of chews and half a bottle of water.
Which is like
400
calories.
400 calories. Yeah.
So,
that's the only.
Yeah.
Like you just know there's nothing coming. Like, yeah.
Sorry about the notification. I've got it on Do Not Disturb. It won't happen again. My apologies. I want to take a second, real quick, to remind everybody, if you haven't been in here, Be More Awesome kit sales close on Monday. That is 3 days from now.
Someone asked a bit ago if we had anything that wasn't Lycra, and we do have trail kits as well. These are the 3/4 length ones,
which Sid really likes.
My preference. They also have short sleeve and long sleeve, and the baggies, which are a lot of fun. It's hard, I think, to find fun, colorful baggies out there.
They look really nice.
Maybe that's because most people don't want them, but we are in the minority, and we think all of you are like us.
Yeah, we think all of you are in the minority and want really cool ones. And pockets in the front, zipper pocket in the back. They're nice. They're definitely nice.
Eric, thank you for the super chat. That is very generous.
Very generous.
Do we have a 5-year plan? And if so, what is it? I think our 5-year plan is to well, I don't know. This will be a test. See if we come up with the same answer. But
do it at the same time.
What should we kind of just keep doing what we're doing and see how much we can improve in 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
So no babies for 5 years.
No babies for 5 years.
That's the rule.
Yeah.
At least. If not longer.
Yeah.
Which I feel like might have been the question.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, at this point, both of us are enjoying prioritizing training, prioritizing YouTube and doing videos, and seeing what we can do, getting to experience lots of really amazing events put on by really excellent promoters, sharing that with you guys here on YouTube, on Patreon. We want to keep doing that. We feel really fortunate that we're able to. We've been able to meet so many of you at Patreon camp and at different events, and that's really cool. So we want to do that. Keep doing that.
We both feel like we can continue to improve, both on the bike, but also the craft of creating videos and telling stories. We're not bored of it yet, and we feel very lucky to be able to do this. So so thank you all.
Yeah, thank you for making it possible. We really appreciate it.
Someone says babies ain't for everybody. This is true.
Yep.
Have we sold all the past bikes? We have not.
We have,
but most of them.
An RLT gravel bike, the RLT carbon gravel bike with a Di2 build on it. We have the RLT electric bike, which is also carbon and very nice. And then we have my custom painted rocket. So
if you want any of those,
if you want a custom painted, one of a kind 9er rocket in a size large, you guys can
shoot us a
send us
DM
an
on
email.
Instagram or email.
info@sidmacky.com. Pretty straightforward.
So this I thought was an interesting question from Vence Vida on Patreon. Do any of your sponsors have performance-based incentives like bonuses for making the podium? And not right now.
Yeah, that is something we have had in the past. At this point, we are fortunate in that all of our sponsors kind of understand that one of the big ways we bring value is like sharing the story, and it's not just podium appearances. And like, it's actually funny because we care about doing well more than any of our sponsors do. Our sponsors are like, you guys do whatever you want, we don't care. And we're like, no, we want to win. So that's definitely on us, the caring about doing well. Our sponsors are just like, you guys do your thing.
Yeah. I don't know if that's still, I suspect that's still a thing for a lot of athletes. It was kind of something we generally have tried to avoid just because you don't really need extra pressure on racing.
At least we don't. Some people might, but we definitely don't.
It like is not helpful for us necessarily. And I think, like, I don't know, we definitely have friends and new people and have known people that like they are making a living based off of prize money, and like that has never been the goal for us. It seriously limits the races that you can do, because I think someone asked how much do you won at Moab, and the answer is $0. There is no prizes at these kind of stage races.
And a cool plaque.
You get a cool plaque, yeah.
No, most of the races we do, there is not money.
Yeah.
So it is thanks to, YouTube AdSense somewhat. It's thanks to you guys. It's thanks to Patreon, honestly, that we are able to keep doing what we do. Because, and like our sponsors, we have some paying sponsors, really appreciate them. But the majority of our income for racing bicycles comes from Patreon. So we really appreciate everybody on Patreon who makes it possible. And I hope you guys appreciate them too.
Yeah, we've had a couple questions about following the paint dashes on the Moab trails, which I think there was a question on Patreon. I can't find it right now, but I'm pretty sure there was one, and there was just one in the chat, and it also came up a lot on YouTube. I think it is easier in person, but like not that much easier.
No, it's still hard, especially that day 2, the starting part on Circle O, where it was like a brown poop smear line. That was really hard because the sun was coming in your eyes, and like when they're green or yellow, those are easier generally because they stand out a little bit more. But like the brown on the rock is really hard to follow. And
I think it's always harder racing, because you're going harder, your heart rate's up. You're also like following the person in front of you who might be doing God knows what.
Yeah.
Shout out to Joe for leading us both into a sand pit on stage 3. But it's also, I think, harder because it's early in the morning, like that, especially like the beginning of day 2 was very hard. Yeah, because we were just on slick rock and you couldn't see anything.
And that's the benefit of days 1 and day 1, there's no really following paint lines, you're just following the trail. Day 3, we've raced it enough times, and I actually raced it as an enduro a couple times before that like I know those trails fairly well, so I remember them pretty well. So that's why I generally end up leading, and then everybody behind me gets a nice ride down the hill.
But it is true, like because of that, like because it's so hard to follow the dots, it makes this, I think that's what makes the race so strategic in some ways. Because, and I saw this a little bit in like Macky's footage where he was following someone, or mine where I was following someone, is like you'd see the other person like do like twice as much, and like as the person behind you can like cut a shorter line. And I'm not talking about like cutting off huge amounts of trail because that's not allowed, but just like even a couple feet 50 times, like you're just doing
when
less
the trail
work.
goes like this and you just go straight down, because you could tell it goes that way because the person in front of you did every single 5-foot squiggle. That helps. And then just the mental fatigue of leading and like following the lines is a real thing. So that's where on day 2, I think it hurt you having to, or not having, but like being the person in front who was like following the lines and stuff, and the women behind you could watch and be like, oh, it's gonna go over here.
Yeah.
Like, oh, there's a technical thing coming. I'm gonna like
And
prepare
I'm not
for
sure
that.
it made a difference, but I do think like I would play it differently next time. I think I needed to take a risk in there somewhere and go hard and see if I could create a gap, because I knew as soon as I got back on the pavement that it was just like I didn't even like I popped out on the pavement, and this was my one good strategic move of the day, is I had like 100 feet lead, and basically I popped out of the pavement and I just sat up and ate a snack.
Yeah.
I was like, I could bury myself, but like they're together.
And they'll just hop on
Yeah,
you and
it's
catch
like,
up, hop on your
whatever.
wheel and get pulled. So yeah, use that to get the calories in so that you feel better.
Yeah. So thank
hour
you
later.
to the super chats. Robert says, do you think Lo will ever attempt stand-up comedy? I don't know, but she probably should. She is as entertaining in person as she is
It's true.
on the videos.
Yeah, Lo in real life is just like Lo in her videos.
Kind of like us.
As like, yeah, so does us.
Joshua says, family loves you guys. I learned so much from each video. Thank you, Joshua.
Thank you very much.
Really
Appreciate that.
Yeah, so we've had a couple questions. Just, we're going to refresh here, make sure we're seeing all the chats. We've had a couple questions just generally asking about like what races we want to do. Michael asked, how do you decide what races pique your interest? Someone asked if we're trying to go to the Olympics. No.
No.
And if we would be interested in doing World Cups or Lifetime, all of that has come up at different points. Mackie has done a World Cup, for starters.
I did race a cross-country World Cup as a U23 in 2009, 8.
Making yourself sound old.
Yeah. I also represented the U.S. at Pan American Continental Championships in 2009 or 10.
Yeah.
So I have raced at that level. I mean, it was cool. You're starting off with like 100 people and you're at the very back and you just claw your way forward like 10 spots. Yeah. We raced a lot of Enduro World Series, which was essentially the World Cup of Enduro back in the day. At this point, we want to race races that were like, that looks fun.
And fun might be type 2 fun.
Yeah, it might be like it might be really hard and therefore fun, or like really technical. But that's sort of the thing with like the Lifetime series is they've done an amazing job of getting great coverage. They have lots of really strong athletes doing it. It's really, really cool.
But half of it is gravel.
And the mountain bike races are
gravel races on the mountain bikes.
They're less technical than the races that we like to do. And so if there was like the Lifetime equivalent, but like between cross country and enduro, so like really hard cross country races, or like we would 100% do that. But doing like 6 or 8 or whatever it is, big hard races throughout the season that aren't really what we want to be racing just doesn't make sense for us. So that's why we are not doing that.
I don't think people totally realize how much that kind of racing at that level all the time can kind of take out of you energy wise, and it becomes like the only thing you can do. And I think for both of us, that's the only, like, we don't want to only race like XCO stuff, so we wouldn't necessarily want to do World Cups even if that was an option. And like we don't want to race the Lifetime gravel stuff. Like Mackie did one full season of EWS, and it was, I mean, hellaciously expensive at a time that we couldn't really afford it, and just like the energy drain was huge.
Yeah,
I think you flew to Europe like 4 times.
Well, that was part of the problem. Is like there was one round in the U.S., maybe 2. I think there was one in the U.S., one in Canada, and then all the other ones were either South America or New Zealand or Tassie. I can't remember which year that was, or Europe. Yeah. So it was like you were like boom, 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 all over, and it was expensive and exhausting and just not that great.
It's a good way to get really burned out. And I think it's different. Like if you are racing World Cups and you're at the pinnacle of it, and you have a ton of really good support, I think that helps a lot. And that's your goal. Yeah, and that's your goal.
If your goal is to do well at like XCO World Cup races to potentially go to the Olympics or go to World Champs, 100% that's what you have to do, because that's how you get the points, etc. But for us, we're like, we want to do the bucket list races. We want to do the really hard, cool races.
And just be able to do a mix of different things too.
Yeah.
Like, okay, we want to do this enduro race because it's really fun, but we don't want to do these other ones that are not fun, or we want to try a 100-mile race, but we don't want to do 10 of them.
Yeah. Yeah, we want to be able to race everything. We want to be able to race everything, basically. Like this year we'll be racing. I'm not gonna say sorry, guys. I almost gave away one of the big events.
Just keep working on MACKY here, and you might get all of our secrets.
That's right. Scroll down real quick. There was a.
Yep.
We want to say thank you to Rock Mumbles for the super chat.
Yeah, thank
Love
you.
your videos. Thank you very much.
We've had a couple questions about fueling more generally. I think there was a question in the other tab there. About how we calculate calories for go down. How you calculate your food / calories needed for the race and training. So
great question from
one
Tara.
of the great things about having a power meter is you can get really accurate calorie burn data, because the kilojoules to kilojoules are work
power
converted to calories. It's a little over my head, but it is I think they say within like 5% accurate. Like different people have different efficiencies, whereas your average heart rate monitor, or like we have the whoops, like that's like a 20%. Like it is sometimes so different than what my power meter is telling me, and I definitely believe the power meter. I think part of that is like we are both very efficient on the bike. It's probably more accurate off the bike for other types of exercise.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and part of it is power is more efficient. You can get an objective measure. You don't get any credit for the upper body work you do. So Mike usually says like, hey, you actually need to like add some on there because you're doing essentially a bunch of push-ups. But what you can do is then take that amount. And what it is like, if you take your average power for an hour and multiply it by 4, that's approximately your calorie burn. That's like a rough, very rough thing. So if you do a ride and you average 200 watts, it'd be hard. You burned 800 calories that hour. And so what we generally shoot for is at least 50% replenishment per hour during the race.
Yeah, which is actually a pretty steep ask if you are someone who has not been eating a lot.
Oh, sorry, leg cramp.
Macky's cramping. There we go. Punch it. Fireball. Where's the fireball?
Where's the fireball? Okay, we're good. We're good. You were saying it's a hard ask if you haven't been practicing fueling that amount.
Right. Yeah. So you do want to work up from where you are. And I think for us, the Scratch Super High Carb has really helped with that. We definitely used to kind of be on the side of like, oh, you should like eat your food, drink your hydration. I think there's a lot of validity to that for like your average endurance ride. However, when you are racing, especially races like Moab Rocks, where frankly it is hard to eat. Like you are not opening bar packages. Like for that race, it's like dump everything straight into the pockets of the jerseys, like the bars in chunks.
You tear it open, you put it in your pocket, you break the bar into chunks so that you can reach in and like grab a handful of
the 400
mush.
Calories in the bottle is super helpful.
Makes a big difference.
Like I've been kind of shooting for that 400 calories an hour mark. We did a 6-hour race a couple weeks ago. That video is coming in the next couple weeks, and that was by far the most super high carb I have ever downed in a race. I think I did 4 bottles or 3.5, which is it was like 1,200 liquid calories, which
14.
is 1,400 liquid calories, which is a lot for me, and actually like tolerated it really, really well. So
which is cool.
Really happy with that.
Yeah. I would recommend in general, if you are racing, consider experimenting with liquid calories and or gels, chews, those kind of things, because they process really quickly and they tend to be pretty easy to like like swallow down. If you're training, you can use those, and you should some to like practice and get used to it. But once you figure out what works, you don't have to buy the expensive processed stuff for training. Like we dried mangoes, we make sandwiches, we like depending on how hard you're going in the
peanut butter and jelly.
Yeah, like
roasted
those
potatoes.
It works great.
Yeah,
so
now I love a potato.
Sid loves a good roasted potato.
So thanks to Adam and Robert for these super chats. Appreciate it. How rare is it to see couples racing at your level? I'm sure there's more that just don't do YouTube. It's not that rare. So Jeff Kabush's girlfriend also won the women's race in at Moab Rocks.
Katarina are a couple, and they're really fast.
Keegan and Sophia,
Yep.
I would say probably
Mm-hmm.
fastest. Cole and Sevilla, who had a briefly dabbled in YouTube. I don't think they're doing it so much anymore, but
Yeah. So
Sevilla's been crushing it on the World Cups, which is really
Mhm.
cool to see. So it definitely happens. I mean, I think it's just like, yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of funny. I think like a lot of the women have husbands or boyfriends that race because I think it's just not that
Statistically,
statistically,
you have more men racing bikes than you do women.
So definitely pretty common, I would say.
Yeah, someone says a homemade burrito has more calories than 2 scratch bars and is a quarter price. Exactly. And that's like when you're racing, a homemade burrito would probably not be the right thing because it's going to be harder to digest, it's going to be harder to eat, etc. But for a training ride, if you're like, I need to go out and ride for 2 hours, 3 hours, and you are planning to take some stops, real food is great. Stop, pause your GPS, eat a quarter of a burrito, keep going.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously, like we worked with Scratch, have worked with Scratch in the past, really believe in their products for racing. However, I will be the first to tell you that gummy bears, like crackers, like it's definitely like not cost effective to use Scratch or really any like performance product all the time.
No.
So we pretty much at this point, since we know what works for us, like we save that for the races.
Mm-hmm.
We've recently just bought like a box of Rice Krispie treats. You know, like
turns out Rice Krispie treats delicious when they warm up in your pocket.
And they're just pure,
so good,
like pure sugar. You know, and gummy bears, pure sugar. Like all that works well, even for like high intensity training for like so much less money. Okay, we've had a couple questions about elevation. I've lost them a little bit. Someone asked, does living and training at elevation in Los Alamos, do you feel like that gives you an advantage? Our house is at 7,200 feet, so
which is like 2,300-ish meters.
Yeah, what's the lowest and highest elevation we've ever raced in, and how does it affect you? So that is a great question. I would say our lowest is 0.
Yes, sea level.
Highest, well, I mean, like highest starting point is probably like 9-ish, but
9 to 10.
Definitely gone. How did we get to 13? Definitely over 12,000.
Breck Epic goes over 12,000 on 2 different days.
Firecracker 50 went over 12. 50. I think, I can't remember.
Yeah, or at least no, I'm not sure it went over, but it was at least close.
Got there, yeah.
I did my Everesting between 9,300 or 9,500 and 12,000 over and over. I would say in general, I don't feel like elevation affects me a whole lot.
Yeah. I think elevation is, I like to think of it like a weather condition. Like it kind of affects everyone the same way. You can be acclimated to it or not acclimated to it. Like you can be poorly acclimated to heat, right?
Yeah.
You can be poorly acclimated to freezing cold and rain. There's a mental component. There's also a component of just staying on top of your hydration is extremely important in elevation for definitely like some scientific reasons I don't entirely understand, but I think like whenever you're putting your body under stress, staying on top of hydration
and fueling
and
calories,
I think for us, like obviously we're very used to racing at elevation. Like we have to be a little careful when we race at sea level.
Because basically your heart rate
blow yourself
doesn't go as high when you're lower than you're used to. So you're like, oh, my heart rate is not that high. I'm fine. But your legs are doing more work or as much work as they would be at a higher heart rate. So you're like, la, 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 I'm doing fine. And your legs are like,
yeah. If you go from being adapted to elevation to racing at sea level, like it's definitely worth kind of looking at that power meter, having that metric, because the heart rate won't help you.
Yeah, heart rate.
Someone said something about Whoop in the chat, how to utilize them. Well, when we're at sea level, we can do no wrong as far as Whoop is concerned. It is literally BC bike race. It was like 97, 98, 99.
Yeah, it was so happy whenever we're at sea level. It's like, you are so recovered, and you're like, why do I not feel so recovered?
Yeah, it's definitely fallible. I would say we use it, but we take it with a grain of salt.
Well, and I would say that it's actually been really helpful in that it allows you to track different things and so day to day you can say like, okay, yesterday I did an ice bath and I did a sauna and blah blah. It knows when you sleep, etc. And so it tells you what are the most valuable things for recovery. And basically what we've learned is sleep is the most important thing. It's like a 10% improvement when you sleep well. And that's like the biggest thing that we've learned is like those other things, they can help. They're like a couple percent here and there, maybe as much as 5 or 6%, but really sleep is like the most important thing. So you should definitely prioritize sleep.
And eat.
Yeah. And then we also use them when we're riding. We put them up on our biceps and we use them as heart rate monitors. And so it just means that we don't have to have two different devices, which is nice.
So I think we are about at the point that we are going to wrap this party up. Did you guys ever consider running a 5K race? No. We ran a turkey trot.
I did the turkey trot.
Yeah. I ran 5Ks in high school.
Sid ran cross country.
In the cross country, but I got that out of my system, I think. Should probably just quickly refresh and make sure we're not missing anything. But thank you guys for watching.
Refresh that one too.
Yeah. This is running barf. I agree.
Yeah.
I think we've hit all those.
Yeah. Any more questions? Throw them in the comments. Like we said, super chats are the ones that we.
And don't forget to order your kits. Whee!
bit.ly/BeMoreAwesomeKits. Like we actually for reals are not doing this pattern anymore. We weren't sure last year. We were like, I think we'll do a different one for next year, but it was so good. We were like, no, we're keeping it.
Yeah, definitely keeping
but
it. We also had a lot of people that didn't get one last year. Yes. Like, can I get one of those?
So that is not happening again. This is the last opportunity for reals, and they are pre-order. So orders close Monday. You should see them by June 21st. It's a pretty good turnaround, actually. And that's like, we don't order any extras. So if you don't get them.
Someone else is the sizing on point. It is pretty good. We both size down for the trail stuff. I think they run them a little big. Trail jerseys, yeah. I think they run them a little big just so that if you are wearing elbow pads or chest protection or anything like that.
Yeah.
So, and we don't typically wear that, so I wear a small in the trail stuff.
I wear a small in the trail stuff, but a medium in the cross-country stuff. So depending on what you plan to wear under it, here's the way to think about it. I wear a medium t-shirt, a medium or a small t-shirt, depending on the cut. And I wear a medium cross-country jersey and a small trail jersey. Yeah. So I think you can go about what you would do in a t-shirt if you wanted a little bit looser fitting, potentially a size smaller if you want a little bit tighter fitting.
I like my trail stuff to fit like Lycra.
Yeah.
Because I'm weird like that.
Christian says, I got the bibs last time and they were normal size. Cool. Yeah, I would say the bibs fit very consistently, and go for like t-shirt sizing when you go for the cross-country jersey.
Cool. I think we are going to wrap that there. Thank you guys for hanging out with us on a Friday night.
Fun.
Super fun. I don't actually know how to make this stop.
Well, also let us know. We're thinking of doing lives like this after stage races, just to answer questions, etc.
Bigger events.
Yeah, or bigger events. So if you enjoyed it, let us know. Div says sizing advice from last year was perfect.
Cool.
Great.
Awesome.
Good. Thanks, guys. We appreciate you.
Now we just sit here while Mackie figures out how to turn off.
Now I'm just going to pretend I can't figure out how to turn it on.
Thank you guys so much. That was a lot of fun.
Oh, somebody says it doesn't show up on your shop. That's correct. You have to go to bit.ly/BeMoreAwesomeKits.
So Primal does all our fulfillment for the kits.
Yeah,
So
which means you actually get them quickly and nothing gets
when we
screwed
did the
up.
fulfillment, it was a disaster. So
Yeah, I'm just gonna throw it in here one more time.
Maggie's gonna put a link in the chat. And
link in chat.
We will see you guys next Friday. That's what I think is gonna be a pretty fun video.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be a good one.